Good morning. Barry Bryson here, thanking you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. And we're beginning the study that I've entitled Neglected Books of the New Testament. These are books that we don't study as in-depth as certainly we ought, and books that typically get tacked on to the end of a study of another book. Books like Philemon or 2nd and 3rd John or Jude. And we're going to begin with a study of the book of Titus, which is a wonderful little book. It is a very small book compared to the others of Paul's letters, except Philemon, of course. Because it's so much like Timothy, it usually gets tacked on the last week or last 2 weeks of study of Timothy. The only time we really go into the text and delve deeply into the text in Titus is when we want to talk about the qualifications of elders. And then we'll spend a lot of time there in the first chapter looking into a few verses there. But it's a wonderful, wonderful book, and it really deserves our attention. And so we're going to take about 10 of these sessions to look at the book of Titus. So what is Titus? It's a pastoral epistle, probably written about the same time of 1 Timothy. But it's different than 1 Timothy. In a sense, Titus is Paul's one true pastoral epistle, because I think of 1st and 2nd Timothy as paternal epistles, because although Paul has worked with Titus for a long time and they have a very close relationship, and he does call him his son in the faith, he doesn't have the same father-son relationship with Titus as he does with Timothy, which is evident when you read the book. Nor does he have the same number of worries about Titus in the local congregations as he has clearly expressed about Timothy in 1st and 2nd Timothy. It's a more straightforward relationship, very warm, trusting, working relationship between an older minister and a younger minister, full of affection, but it is lacking the true paternal feel of 1st and 2nd Timothy, and the enormous weight of worry that Paul expresses in both 1st and 2nd Timothy. Titus has been working with him from the very beginning. They were co-workers at Antioch. He's mentioned in the book of Galatians as being there at Antioch. He's mentioned 4 times in the book of 2 Corinthians as someone who cares about and has worked with that congregation. He's mentioned in 2 Timothy there at the end of Paul's life as having been sent by Paul to the Dalmatian coast, which what used to be Yugoslavia, there across the Adriatic. He is not mentioned a single time in the book of Acts, and that's raised a few eyebrows, but not with this guy right here. I mean, Acts is a particular history of the church. Peter and Paul are the 2 main characters. Actually, the Holy Spirit is the main character, and the other players, the supporting cast, enter as needed in the episodes that Luke has chosen. And if he hasn't listed everybody that Paul works with, that should not raise any eyebrows. Titus is a young man that has been with Paul from the very beginning, longer than Timothy has, and is there working with Paul and part of his staff until the very end. Paul, at this time that he writes the book of Titus, has sent Paul to Crete, to the island of Crete, to establish the congregations there. In the same way, 1 Timothy is written to Timothy to establish the congregation at Ephesus. Paul has sent Timothy to establish several congregations that they have planted together. And so he sends him to Crete. And it's full of advice for this young man who's now working with local congregations. He's no longer traveling on the mission field, but working with local congregations. And so it's going to cover a lot of the same ground, like the appointing of elders, and don't let anybody disrespect you. And these are the problems with this local congregation. The problems that Titus faces in Crete are not the same as the problems that Timothy faces in Ephesus. In the first place, Crete has an enormous Jewish population. It seems from as far back as the 100s BC, the Jewish presence on the island of Crete was significant. In fact, at the time of writing, the Jews were probably the largest ethnic group on the island of Crete, and Paul mentions the problems that he's going to have with Jews in this book. But it was a multicultural, multi-ethnic island, in the same way the work at Antioch was multicultural, multi-ethnic. Influences in Crete, come from three continents, from Africa, Asia, and Europe, located as it is in the Mediterranean Sea, close to all three continents, and having the deep and safe harbors that it has. In fact, Paul spent some time in Fair Havens on that long sea journey that's recorded at the end of the book of Acts, and says we should stay here all winter long on the island of Crete, and they don't listen to him, and they end up shipwrecked. So there's that. And so this is a letter written to Titus. He's here on the island of Crete. The challenges that he has is that the folks there are going to be difficult to work with from the standpoint of their moral character. I mean, and Paul just is quite honest at how difficult this is going to be, almost unsettlingly so. As trained as we are in politeness and political correctness, some of the things that he says about the people who live on the island of Crete might be a little unsettling to us. But he quotes their own sources in telling Titus quite clearly, these are the people that you're going to be working with, and you need to know that ahead of time. Another feature of the book is that some Bible threes that we're used to, Father, Son, and Spirit, faith, hope, and love. Paul gives us two, and not the third, several times in the book, and it makes you wonder what that's about. And we'll notice them when we get to them. Well, I've talked about renaming this Some Good Minutes. This is the 5 Good Minutes because I've taken a little more than 7 minutes of your time right now. We'll give some more introductory material as we get to the text tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 Good Minutes with the Word. We're going to begin with Titus chapter 1, verse 1 tomorrow.